All right, so I'm going to talk about probably a very not well-known component in RHEL 7, 8, 9, and 10 called ReaR. Who has heard of the product ReaR? 1, 2, 3. Who has used it? All right. It can do its job. It can do stuff. So here, this will be good. Everyone will learn something. All right. So what does ReaR stand for? Relax and recover. That's so it's an open source project, and the open source team that built it, that's what they came up with. And then what is it? It is designed to make it very easy to do Linux disaster recovery. It is designed for bare metal, but of course you could apply this to any Linux, any Linux running anywhere. But it is designed for bare metal. That's the kind of the niche use case that it's going after. So a little bit about the history. Again, open source started in 2006, and chugged along for a while, and then SUSE added it into its distribution in 2010, and RHEL, or Red Hat, added it into RHEL in 2015 with RHEL 7. That's actually where I first read about it, and I read the line, ReaR, Linux bare metal recovery. Okay, cool, we got a tool. And that was about as far as I got. And so now here, a number of years later, right, 11 years later, I decided, well, how do you learn about a product? Well, you present on a product, right? So, or a component. So I dug in and started figuring out what it could do, and it does what it says it can do. It is written in Bash, 100% in Bash, and again, if you are an advanced Bash user, or if you want to do some really advanced things with ReaR, very simple to do because it is, again, written in Bash, so it will take kind of that programmatic methodology into its extensions and its plugins. So like I said, it's included in RHEL 7 and newer, so it even ships with RHEL 10. There's also a Git repository if you want to live on the edge and go grab it right from the Git repo. So I kind of alluded to this, but it is a tool and framework for creating a bootable image for restoring a backup. So there's really two components of it. It creates a bootable image that helps you point to that backup repository of your latest backup, and then pull that backup down. And it can also do backups. It is probably designed for when you're using it in the enterprise to leverage one of your third-party or your enterprise backup solutions. But it does have some basic backup functionality in it, and that's what I used. But as an enterprise customer, you probably already have that backup solution running, so you would just point or leverage the plugin technology that we'll talk about, and leverage one of the third-party commercial backup solutions that you're already running. So again, as a backup solution, integrates with a lot of popular third-party commercials. I'll go through the list of those. Very simple to use, and it's a very simple config file to get things going. So how does it work? So you install the required packages, of course. You configure your host for the backup. You perform the backup. You create a recovery image, and performing the backup and creating the recovery image can be either or and, or both, and we'll see that. And then the recovery image can actually be fired off onto a USB physical media or an ISO that can be written to a USB later. Or if you have a PXE environment, it can also talk to your PXE backend and create those PXE entries for you, so you can just recover through a PXE boot. And then you boot and you recover. So the installed packages that are required, there's 3 that are required for the bare minimum function, which is ReaR, grub2 EFI x64 modules, and grub2 tools-extra. So those are the required packages to get the recovery CD and image built. And then depending on your configuration, if you're going to use NFS, right, it's going to need some NFS utils to do the NFS mount. So that would be an optional if you're going to do store the backup on NFS or store the bootable image on NFS as well. And then if you're going straight to the USB drive or USB-C NVMe device or anything that talks over USB, you will need the syslinux ext Linux package, because part of that process is you actually have to do a format of the device, so it lays down a file system and a label so that ReaR knows that it's talking to the correct device when it does the recovery and the backup. So we'll show you that. And then it does dump out a nice, very verbose config file in user share ReaR config default.conf. Highly documented, all the options are in there. So that's worth taking a look at when you are starting out. So there's really two main types of stanzas or config stanzas that we need to worry about. So the first is called output, and that is where and what type of rescue image we are going to create. So which output rescue media am I using? There's 6 to choose from. And then if you choose ISO, RAM disk, or raw disk, you also have to configure output_URL, and there are 12 items to choose from with that. So you're going to configure your rescue option, and then the second thing that you're going to care about is the backup. Where are you either dumping your backup, or where are you grabbing your restore from your backup solution? So when you select backup, there are 24 backup options to pick. If you choose NetFS, which is the built-in backup tool, then you get one of 8 target choices as well. And so we'll go through that. So which output rescue media do you want to use? So RAM disk, ISO, PXE, OBDR, which is actually tape, and USB and raw disk. I'm going to actually go through the 2 examples of using an ISO and a physical USB as well. All right, so we've selected ISO. We now need to decide where are we storing that ISO file. So right now we're going to go through the whole example of deploying or building a rescue image and dumping it onto an NFS server, and then also using the built-in backup tooling, NetFS, and sending our backup to the NFS server as well. So again, you can see that we have a number of options to choose from just a direct file, fish, which I don't even know what that is, but it's some sort of protocol, FTP, FTPS, HTTP, HTTPS, NFS, rsync, SSH, and null. So for NFS, we would pick NFS. We'll show more details on that. And then what backup solution could you use? Like I mentioned, we're going to talk about NetFS, but here is the laundry list of backup solutions that are officially work with the product. Some of them are just pure open source, things like Borg and Backup Clone. Others are, or Bacula, and others are paid for, premium enterprise solutions like Dell EMC Avamar, Rubrik. You can kind of read the list, right? Duplicity, external custom restore method, so it's very customizable. Some of these I haven't never even heard of: FDR Upstream, Commvault, Novastore, Veritas. NetFS is the one that we're going to use in this example. You can go straight to an NFS4 server, Dell Networker, OBDR, again, that's tape recovery, Dell Power Protect, Data Manager, rsync backup made easy, request restore from human operator. So that's an interesting one, I guess. And then rsync is also another built-in one. Seam from SCP, IBM Storage Protect, and then Veeam as well. So you've probably, I don't know if you guys, if anyone here is using a backup solution that isn't listed on here. If you are and you do want to leverage ReaR and work with yours, I know the open source provider maintainers will do consulting to get that engagement. So there is a fee that you can pay their team, and then of course it would eventually make its way back up into the product. That's not something that Red Hat is probably going to go after, but I know the upstream maintainers are interested in obviously extending this list. Okay, so we've picked NFS. So now that we've picked backup NFS, we need to decide which backup URL. So that would be NFS, and then we would plug in our full NFS path, which we'll show here in the official example. So like I mentioned, we're going to go through an example. We're going to go through two examples. The first one is the backup, full backup and restore image to an NFS server. And then we're also going to do a full backup and building the restore image on a USB device that's plugged physically into my server. So the first one's NFS. So we need to first create that bootable ISO image, and we want to target at the NFS server. So the output is going to be ISO. So it's going to generate that rescue bootable disk in an ISO format. And the output URL is my NFS path. So it's going to dump that ISO file straight onto that path that I've listed out. Now we want to actually create that backup. So we want, when we choose NetFS when we choose NetFS and NFS as the backup target, what it will do is create a host name as the directory off of that path. So we can see, if we're doing multiple backups of multiple hosts, we have each host backup. There's also an option called NetFS Keep Old Backup, and it will keep and maintain one backup. So you have one archive, and it will be called hostname.old. So with this backup solution, you can only have two running backups, a current one and an old one. So again, this is a very simple backup solution to use. And then the backup URL, again, for the actual backup is going to be on that NFS path. The backup tool in NetFS by default uses tar and then compresses it. You can also substitute that with some of the options if you wanted to leverage rsync instead of tar. And that's just configurable within the config file. You also have the option to exclude certain directories. So some of the examples would be /media, var temp, var crash, temp, dev shared memory, or whatever else you wanted to include just to help speed things up or things that are just not important to backup. And then there is kind of a manual requirement if you're doing any sort of UEFI secure boot. You do need these two commands in there, or define these two parameters, so it will know how and where to configure the secure bootloader. So once all that is done, you have a very simple config file that you will run and leverage on your system. A couple of other options that you can pass so normally when you go and do the restore, it will ask for a username, which is root, and you have to manually interact with it, and then you have to manually type the recover sequence. So if you are confident in your process, or maybe you're doing a bunch of repetitive things, you can pass in auto recover and unattended, and then when you boot up from that recovery image, since everything is programmed into that image, it knows where to go for the NFS backup restore. It's just going to start the whole process automatically. So you can do that if you are comfortable with how you have everything laid out. And then if you, for some reason, have some backup options that you would want to pass into the NFS server, maybe you need to back down to NFS version 3 because the default is 4. You can pass in some backup options for that the NetFS NFS client will read. All right, so those are optional. So now you have your config file built on your host, and you want to do a backup. Very simple. ReaR-v is verbose. Make backup only. It'll read the config file, start dumping your entire file system that you've laid out, because by default it just does everything. There are ways to say, hey, I only want to use SDA or NVMe1 to back up just specific types of physical drives, but by default it'll just do everything on the system. So it's creating that backup to that NFS mount as a tar gzip. If you only wanted to create the rescue media, ReaR, verbose, make rescue, it will look and see and say, oh yeah, okay, I need to create this rescue disk, it'll create it appropriately, and then it will automatically insert the recovery links for your backup via NFS into that rescue media. So when you boot off of it, it knows about the NFS server. But most of the time, you're probably going to want to just do both of them. So you would do ReaR, verbose, make backup, and it does the rescue disk first, and then does a full backup all together as one set of commands. And then it does generate a log file, so you can go look at the logs. So now that you've done your rescue disk creation, again, we've done an ISO and it's sitting out on the NFS server. We need to move that ISO onto a bootable media. So I use a tool called Fedora Media Writer. You point it to the ISO, you throw your USB stick in, it writes it, or you could do DD, and however you want to move that ISO over to a physical media. You now have that physical media, you go stick it in your physical server, you boot it up. It's going to go through, it's almost like a RHEL rescue CD, but it's specifically designed for this recovery. And so it will come up, log in as root. There is no password. I actually could not figure out a way to set a password, so I may have just totally missed it. I don't know if anyone that's used it has found out if there's a way to actually set a password for the root recovery. I see both ways. I see both reasons why you wouldn't want one and you would want one, but by default there's no password. So you just type in root, hit enter, and you're at a prompt. And now you would type ReaR recover, and because again it has the knowledge of the config file, it knows that you're doing the recovery from the NFS server with a certain path. It will start pulling that down all for you and doing a full recovery. And it's just, I mean, everything on that system is getting wiped out. It's like, so you're doing a full complete restore. So you want to make sure you are doing it. It will prompt you, and I should have put it in my note, it will prompt you, are you sure you want to do this? You have to type yes, and then it'll start wiping everything and reloading everything off of that backup. So if you were using a third-party backup solution, there would be other variables, right? There's probably going to be some sort of authentication into Veeam or whatever solution you're using. So there's going to be some other variables in your config file that are going to be telling it where to or how to get into that system, and then also what image or what backup you want to restore. So those would all be unique variables that are in the config file that you'd have to put in. So it does a restore, does a reboot, and because we love SE Linux, it's going to do an SE Linux relabel, so you got to wait for that, and then it'll do one more reboot, and you're good. So of course, depending on your file system and size of recovery, that will adjust the time, and SE Linux does take time during that relabel. Any questions so far? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it doesn't. Nope, no, because you can tell it to not, right? Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. Do you need a custom recovery image for each individual server then, or is that kind of? Yeah, it's one-to-one. Yeah. So the question was, do you need a custom recovery? So you're basically building a recovery for each one of your systems, and it's tied that way. Yeah, all right, so that's, using the built-in, just going everything via NFS. Now we want to maybe speed things up, or we have, big NVMe, whatever, 100 terabyte drives we can stick in servers, whatever. So we're going to use a USB device. Pretty much the same process, but there's a little bit of prep work up front. We have to first prepare the device. So for a legacy BIOS boot mode, which we still have some of those laying around, it's just ReaR format and then the block device. For UEFI, it's ReaR format, and for some reason we've got to do a -- space -- EFI and the device, and that will prepare it correctly. Again, confirm yes to make sure we know what we're doing with that USB device, and that we want to destroy it. And it will label that device with the default name of ReaR-000. Again, that's configurable, but that is the default. All right, so now that we have our USB device formatted and ready to go and labeled, we need to configure our server that the output method instead of ISO is USB, because we're going to talk directly to a USB device, and that we want to agree that that line actually, the second line is there by default, but I like to put it in there because I want to make sure, yes, I am for sure calling this USB device ReaR-000. But that's where if you wanted to change it, you would change it as well as during the formatting process. So that's the label we're going to be looking for to make the recovery CD. And then if we want to actually do the backup also to that same USB device, backup also is NetFS, which is the built-in backup feature. And then our backup URL points directly to that USB UDEV label ReaR-000. We can still do excludes just like before, and we still have to put in the UEFI bootloader and secure bootloader stanzas. So our config file looks fairly similar. And then with this one, we just do a ReaR make backup. It'll lay down the recovery and the boot process on the USB device, and then do a full backup right to that USB as well. And then, of course, we just bounce the server or take it to our recovery server, log in as root, do the ReaR recover, and it will pull directly from the USB, potentially being much faster than over the network, and same sort of cycle, right? Reboot, SE Linux relabel, and reboot again. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if 000, does anybody know? Can it span? Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to check that out. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I do know, so again, this is designed for like recovery. I did watch a video on the guy who wrote it, and he basically said that there is a variable that you can change, I think by default, if there's a 20% delta in the size of a drive. So a lot of times new systems will have bigger drives than what you had. So if the bigger drive is bigger by 20%, it will just go ahead and do it because it's like, hey, the hard drive is bigger, it's okay, I can still do the recovery. And that is a variable, like if you knew the hard drive was going to be twice as big or more, you could change that. But by default, it gives you a little bit of grace period on drives that are slightly bigger than if you got a new laptop or a new system you want to recover. There's also a mechanism to do like drive mappings, so you could attempt, right, to do, my recovery was on an NVMe and now I need to go to whatever, the quantum fusion whatever storage that just came out. There's some sort of mapping capabilities that you can try to do, but again, it's designed for the one-to-one. Supposedly, and I didn't test this, but it's supposed to be able to, during the backup process, it's supposed to be able to remake software RAID, so MD RAIDs from Linux, as well as Lux encrypted. It's supposed to be able, if it can read it, it's open, it will recreate that on the new system. So I didn't test that, so I don't know exactly how it gets the key. My guess is it's probably going to prompt for the key to retype it in. But that is what I had for us and ReaR. Any questions? Any advice from a ReaR user? Watch out for what? Okay.
You have really high UID numbers. The last log gets really big in size.
Okay. So that might be one to exclude? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I actually ran into a thing. So var crash. So I didn't think I needed the /*. So I just did var crash. I was like, I don't need any of my crash stuff, so I'm going to exclude the var crash directory. Well, I had kdump configured on my system. Well, kdump will only start if var crash directory is there. And so if you exclude var crash directory, now kdump won't start. So what you want is you have to put the /* so it recreates the crash directory, even though it's going to be empty, and then you won't get the kdump issue, which I ran into. So I actually was. I just manually, in my troubleshooting, I manually created var crash, did restore con, and then kdump came right up. And so then I was like, okay, I know exactly what the problem is. But, there was no documentation that warned me of that. So.
I have a very similar story from the 90s. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions or words of wisdom from ReaR users? I think one of the probably in my opinion, the backup isn't. I wouldn't recommend using the backup solution, but I think the rescue media that would automatically point to your backup solution. I think that has some power, right?
Some other rescue media. So I'm assuming it's not a full RHEL install.
No.
So roughly how large?
It's like a couple hundred meg. I mean, it's hundreds of megs. Yeah.
So operating is definitely more compelling for bare metal, right? Like,
Yes.
I never use this to restore a VM that I backed up. People just
Right.
do it straight to the hypervisor with nothing to touch.
Exactly.
Bare metal though, where you
right.
Bootstrap everything.
Yep.
Maybe this can do better than you can and actually getting an OS on.
Well, yeah. Again, that's what this is designed. It's for bare metal, and that was, can you use it to recover a virtual machine? Yes, right. But it's designed for bare metal. Yep. And then like IBM Power, this works with IBM Power systems.
That's why Fish is there.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
It's all the mainframe.
Yeah.
Right? They never held that SSH on.
Yeah. So Fish is an AIX thing, or it's what? Oh, files over shell. Okay. So shouldn't it be Foch? Right. Okay. Cool. All right. So what's the common backup tool that everyone's using? I heard Veeam, Rubric, Net Backup. Which one? I haven't not heard of that one. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, Power. Anything else? Pure. All right. Commvault. Cohesity. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, good. Well, like I said, that's what I have. Yeah. Who knew it was in all of our RHEL?